We like to invite one former commissioner of Ekiti State, Olubumi. This is Olubumi. Let's give a round of applause for her. Okay. Okay, you're okay there. It's okay. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to the IRC conference at the Hague Political Economy of Violence. The focus of today's discussion is of great importance to us, as we all know the reported cases of violence across the world, particularly when you look at the shift from the African perspective. We could observe what went wrong in South Africa, the xenophobia attacks on the blacks, the Kenya attacks also, and the Nigerian attack. What really inspires us as a committee of the IRC was because of immediately after the Baga attack in Nigeria that led to the death of 2,000 Nigerians and then displacement of 20,000. That was why the committee felt it was important for us to have a little focus on the Nigerian and see what's really happening there. Particularly, we have our guest speaker in the house, Matthias Akingbeno, who is going to be giving us a different perspective to the issues that is going on in Nigeria. So I am very sure that he's well prepared for us. Very quickly, I would just like to tell you what the IRC as a committee do and who we are. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Adenitan Olufemi, the president of the International Relations Committee of Scholars. It's a student body that organizes conference, seminars, and workshops around. So far, so good. We have been able to achieve some remarkable success due to our recent programs. The first we did was in conjunction with the Critical Collective, which is the Paris attack in context Islamic terrorism and the West, which was held on the 12th of March this year. Following that, we also have another very wonderful event, which was held on the 16th of March. We had a Korean politician who came to speak with us, and it was also, we really had a nice time. Of recent, we also had a conjunction with a collaboration with the Critical Collective that we talked about the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the Real Stories, and it was held on the April 13. That event was also very successful. Ladies and gentlemen, the IRC committee has been very committed in achieving its outlined goals. And we are happy that today that our speaker is in the house and he will be giving us a different perspective to the topic of today. I want us to feel relaxed, feel calm, and enjoy the proceedings of the program. Once again, I want to thank you all for finding the time to come to this event. Quickly, I would like to invite Jerome to read the citation of Matthias Akingbeno before he delivers his lecture. Let's give another applause for Jerome.
In the oil and gas sector. He is currently the well engineering manager for Shell Nigeria. He oversees drilling aspects of SPDC, operational excellence in Shell Nigeria, as well as the human capital management and development in this line of business. Matthias has a wealth of experience managing a number of stakeholder interfaces with partners, government agencies, and other NGOs. Representative to the Oil Producers Trade Session, OPTS. He has worked locally and internationally in diverse cultural environments in USA, Norway, Netherlands, Middle East, and now in the tense politically acute and economically bastardized Niger Delta in West Africa. He has also acquired experience working in the other non-operated ventures like State Oil Hydro and Agipco. Experience cover onshore remote operations, offshore jack-up operations, deep water North Sea and GOM operations, and recently dealing with well-headed tempering emergencies and interventions to restore integrity. He has evolved to become a well-rounded professional and a rare gem, combining strong technical and analytical abilities with clear leadership skills. Matthias has a Master of Science degree from the University of Lagos, and a bachelor's degree in science from the University of Benin. He also holds a number of postgraduate diplomas from various institutions of management and a supervisory leadership diploma from Minerva Institute in the UK. He is the author of various circular and professional papers and publications. He is involved in youth enlightenment and empowerment programs. He is married to Mrs. Hilda Aquideno and are both blessed with 3 children. His views on contemporary issues are independent and do not represent the opinions or positions of his employers in public fora. Please give a warm welcome to Matthias Aquideno.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what your preferences are. Maybe I come to the podium. Yeah, it gives me a great pleasure to be here this evening to speak on the topic given. So just permit me to flip-flop a while and get used to the systems here. Okay, it gives me great pleasure to be here this evening and to see young men and women who are interested in the goings on in the world. When I first saw this topic, political economy of violence, a number of things began to race through my mind. So typically, I called up my wife. By the way, my wife and family lives here in the Netherlands. She used to work with Ashland and in a chemical company in Rotterdam. So she's actually on her way from work and might be joining us before the end of the session. But if she doesn't make it, then I can say up front that she sends her regards. So my last boy is here, and he says, I want to be with Daddy and my friend Lucas. They are also here. The 2 other ones are much taller than me now, and they are spending some time in the kitchen because we are expecting a guest this evening. Okay, so when I got this topic, the first thing I did was I called my wife, and I said, if you are an engineer with sound technical background, and you get a topic that is non-technical, non-engineering, more about social performance and behavioral patterns of people and cultural setting, what do you do? And in particular for this topic, what are your thoughts? And then we talked like we normally do, and then we went to our own kitchen, did some brewing, and we've come up with what we want to share with us this evening. So when I saw this topic, the political economy of violence, 3 things stood out very clearly, in my mind. And you permit me tonight to veer off in the way that you are not used to. And I believe that's why you invited me to have a clearly independent, out of the box thinking and third eye opinion. Okay? So 3 things came to my mind. The first thing was politics. The second was economy, and the third was violence. Simple. Then I turned it around as an engineer, and I said, if A equals B, and B equals C, therefore A must be equal to C, and B must be equal to A or equal to C. I hope you get my analogy. So in other words, if I turn this topic around, and I look at it from the other point of view, and I talk about an economy underpinned by political violence, it will be the same thing to me. If I turn it the other way around again and talk about violence engineered and causing political, political entrenchment to thrive, it will mean the same thing to me. In other words, we are looking at the interplay of politics, economy, and violence. And no matter how you turn it around, the guy who bears the brunt It's you and I who lives on the street. Never are the key players in this particular area the people that bear the brunt. And that's why I came up with the pictures that you see there. Now, while brother is killing brother, and the politicians are smiling to the polls, and your brother, your sister is finding it difficult to eat, some people are stashing away money in their bank account, locally or internationally. So I want you to have that view, because I'm going to challenge you with some thoughts tonight. And I can say up front, don't expect me to reach any conclusions, as you will be reaching the conclusions yourself. Okay, so I will do some talking. You will do some thinking. I will do another set of talking. You will think and talk. We'll both conclude, and I get out of your way. Okay, so that that has been said. So I will jump that. I will say up front. Now, what I see in the political economy of violence is, no matter how we look at it, the real drive is that people want to get political power, they want to get economic power, and they use the instrument of violence and religion to drive their philosophy, their thoughts, and their desires. And I'll spend most of the rest of the presentation trying to review cases and show that this is what is happening. And so when some people come out in the name of religion, the underlying tone is not actually religion. It is actually the fact that they want to grab economic power and they want to grab political power. In other words, what we see is a power play. Otherwise, how can you explain, for instance, in a landlocked environment in northeast Nigeria, I will come there, I'm jumping ahead of the gun, it's landlocked, and the seaport is down southwest, and armored cars can get to a landlocked country. When they are not manufactured in the country, they come in by the sea. When the key to the seaport and the surveillance of the country is in the hands of the people with political power. So somebody is signing the release of those armored cars from the wharf and from the port before they transit in a landlocked environment to the northeastern part of the country, because they don't drop by parachutes into those places. Okay? If you look at North Africa, if you look at every other part of the world, the same thing. And these are supposed to be impoverished people. Armored cars cost millions of dollars to purchase. So who is funding and who is deriving the benefit from the chaos? Okay, so what we are looking at here is power play for political power, and power play for economic power. I'll just take a little bit of tour, because what your expectations were was for me to talk about Boko Haram. I will do a little bit of it, but I will not do as much as you expect, because that will be looking at it from a very myopic aspect. The world is no longer living in isolation, and nobody is living in isolation anymore. So it is difficult to ostracize anything in particular and begin to focus on that thing and lose sight of what is happening around. So I put a very recent map of the global political violence, in the world up here. Okay? And it's there. And that's the source of the data. Can make that available to us afterwards. Now you will see the nations that are listed there: Iraq, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Nigeria, Central African Republic, Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Those ones are the red countries. Those are the high risk, very high risk areas with high incidence of political, violence. And then as you transit from amber to yellow and to green, by the way, these are greens. It's not quite clear there. Those are greens. Now, but as you transit from the deep red through the amber, yellow, and then to the green, the risk and level of occurrence begin to diminish. In other words, the deep red here are areas of high risk and where it occurs almost every time in the world. They actually account for close to 85% of the political violence that we have experienced in the last 7 years, and in particular in 2015 so far. Okay? Now, I need you to note something, that there is literally no line between politically motivated violence. In other words, you are in party A, I'm in party B. I don't want to see party A into power, in power, then I begin to, fight or destroy you. Now that's politically motivated. I don't want you to rule. I don't want you to get to power. That's politically motivated the way we understand it. Okay? There's no line between such politically motivated violence, between that and insurgency, terrorism. There is no line in between. They are all intermingled now and very mixed together. And most importantly is that the effect on the common man and the impact on the economy is the same. So whether it's politically motivated violence, whether it is violence due to terrorism or insurgency or even opposition and rebels like they call it, when there's a constituted government, whatever it is, the impact is the same on the common man on the street and on the economy. And I need you to bear this picture at the back of your mind as we progress. I would like to review the perpetrators of these terror acts. Now, it will interest you to know that all over the world, 10 terror groups are responsible for 90% of the political problems, political violence that we have globally. 10 terror groups are responsible for this. And these 10 terror groups are actually, I will go through each of them and then give you a little synopsis of each of these terror groups. And they are actually active in all those countries that are painted deep red. And then when I give you the synopsis, how they were formed, what drives them, and what they do today, you will agree with me that it is not about Western education or not having Western education. It's not about you are a right-wing or left-wing Muslim, or that you are a Christian that is the issue. It is that there is inordinate ambition for power and for economic, economic well-being that is driving these people. Now, be it as it may, in the course of the pursuit of that, a few people here and there lose the original focus, but the bottom line is this. I'll give you in order. Now, number 10 here, as you go from 10 to 1, the impact of what they do and their level of violence increases. Okay? So, in other words, the fact which is based in Colombia is not as destructive or as has a global impact as much as who the number one will be, which is the ISIS of today. And by the way, this is the global rating. It's not Matthias. Okay? So, and if it is mine, I will tell you. I mean, I don't mix words with that. So these guys die for what they believe, and there's no reason why I should not be able to do that as well. Okay? So I'll tell you my own, and I'll tell you what statistics say. Now, the fact is a Marxist-Leninist group that was formed in Colombia, probably one of the oldest in the terrorist group. It was formed in 1964. And now, what are they? They are primarily drug lords who perpetrate drugs and evil associated with drugs and the money that underlies the drug business in the entire South America. Now, they have influence in many countries, crossing borders, even into the United States. Okay? That is the fact. But when they act, they come out to tell you about our people are being oppressed. Our people are being marginalized. We are not given freedom of speech. They tell you all those good things that the Western society would like to hear. But the bottom line is that the fact is at the bottom of the drug war that you have in Mexico. I don't know how many of you saw in the news sometime last year that the head of 3 policemen were cut off, put in a cool box, frozen, and mailed to the superintendent of police. Right there, in Mexico. Okay? These guys are based in Colombia, but they influence the whole of South America. Now, number 9 is the PKK. I think a number of you have heard about the PKK. Now, the PKK was established in 1978, actually in Turkey. They were established in Turkey, and they actually are fighting for an independent Kurdish state. Now you see what I'm talking about again. They tell you, oh, the Kurdish people are marginalized. They are not given the same rights and privileges. But that does not give a reason to behead a non-Kurdish. So I will just take you along my thoughts. Number 8, I will jump, is Hamas. Hamas is a group in Palestine, born in 1987, and the actual thing why Hamas came to be was to eliminate the state of Israel, okay, and ensure that those two states don't live side by side. It's what is documented by as they are called, okay? Okay? And they said that they want to free the Palestinians from the occupation of Israel. Okay? So that is Hamas. And Hamas works side by side with Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah emerged, from the Lebanese civil war in 1982. Okay? And they are considered the biggest foe of Israel and Sunni Arab countries. So Hamas and Hezbollah work together. Hezbollah, born in 1982, and they want Israel also eliminated, and they don't want to see Sunni Arab countries come to be. Okay? Now they boast about the fact that 41% of Lebanese actually support, the Hezbollah movement. Now Hezbollah has become a philanthropic organization within Lebanon. It has set up centers for food. It has set up centers to help people, but outside this, its primary aim is to behead the Israeli, okay, or to support Hamas in ensuring that the state of Israel and Palestine don't live side by side. Okay? I'm making very strong statements here. Okay? Now, I will jump just for the sake of time. So I will jump to number 4. Number 4 is the Taliban Pakistani. I'm just trying to lay a foundation here that the people who cause political violence are actually after entrenching themselves in political power or economic power. It's not about religion and not about, violence as it were. Okay? Taliban, 2 factions of the Taliban. One is the Pakistani Taliban, okay, and then the number 3 one, the Pakistani Taliban was born in December 2007, okay, and then the other Taliban is a splinter from it that came up from between 1996 and 2001. They came, mainly around Afghanistan and co. Okay, what do they also do? They eventually have part of it evolving into the Al-Qaeda, and they receive, support also from Al-Qaeda. And then, of course, we have the number 2 one. Sorry, I jumped the one that you would have liked to hear about. So let me talk about that one briefly. I'll go back to number 5, which is the Boko Haram. Okay. Boko Haram is the Nigerian terror group, and it's notorious for its very barbaric acts without reason, but with a single fingerprint and stamp, which is blood and the shedding of blood. There is no pattern to the activities, because initially it was thought to be just Muslims, but they started killing Muslims. They were destroying churches before, now they are destroying mosques. They were attacking police stations before, now they are killing civilians. They were killing men before, now they are abducting women and children. So there is no pattern. What they require is not clear. Their charter of demands not clear. Okay? But the name Boko Haram, as it were, simply in English just means that Western education is sin. Okay, that's what Boko Haram means, that Western education, going to school in the West, other than the Arabic or regular Islamic school, is sin. Okay, they consider that sin, and they attack anything to do with development in that area. So that's Boko Haram, and we'll see their modus operandi as we go down. Okay, so now to number 2 is Al-Qaeda. Now, Al-Qaeda is the biggest brand name among all terror groups in the world. This extremist Islamic group was established in 1989 by Osama bin Laden. Under his leadership, the Al-Qaeda carried out the 9/11 attacks on the US, which led to the Afghan war, culminating in the death of bin Laden in May 2012. It's now headed by al-Zawahiri, and the Al-Qaeda is notorious for its integrated network and powerful strategies. Al-Qaeda constitutes thousands of individuals who have accomplished proper military training. Okay, so that's Al-Qaeda. It operates in small cells all over the place, gaining relevance and significance by hitting the news all the time and looking for prime targets that will keep them in focus and in the news. Now, they operate like the human cell of the body will operate. You cut, it divides, and then opens up again. You cut again, it divides, and then opens up again. Okay, and that has made them extremely successful. And one underlying thing is that all the members of the Al-Qaeda have very good, sophisticated military training. And of course, the recent and probably number 1, which, as according to the rating, most deadly, is the Islamic State. You know, now, the Islamic State, I would describe it as saying that it is the devil itself, okay, and it's officially known as ISL or ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant or Syria. The Islamic State controls northern parts of Iraq and western parts of Syria, within which it has formed its own government. Now, I need you to pick those keywords, okay? Because first, they come out that we are against the West. America is our enemy. If America is your enemy, yes. So does that mean you have to form a government within your country? Okay, I mean, many of us have enemies here, but we don't have to form government within the Netherlands to show that somebody is our enemy in Belgium. Okay, so but they've taken parts of certain countries, you know, and formed government there. And that is why I say the issue of economy, political, violence is, about the quest for power, both political power and economic power, rather than the picture that is painted that is about religion. Religion is a tool. Being the opiate of the people, as they say, is a tool that is used. And I will use that to explain why you find that political violence is prevalent in the Middle East, in Africa, and in the Asian countries, and not prevalent in the West and developed country. The reason is because religious beliefs have become part of the culture of the people in Africa, in the Middle East and in the Far East, religious belief. And if you check history and how rulership has been, it has been by monarchy, either by birth of a ruling line, or by religious line, being the head of a religious body. That's how it's been in the Middle East. That's how it's been in Africa and in the Far East. So that has been part of our culture. And therefore, it is easier to get somebody on board to drive your own political or economic interest by using the instrument of religion in those parts of the world than in the western part of the world when nobody cares. You are a Hindu, you are a Christian, you are a Muslim, you say that in Strentrum, they just look at you and say, that's normal. Okay? So it's not an issue, in this part of the world. But in the part where that is part of the culture of the way of the people, it's being used, as an instrument. Now, so you see that from just looking at those bodies, 10 of them that cause 90% of the political violence and drive the economies in those nations that I talked about, you will agree with me. And that's why I said this is my theory. You agree with me that it's about political power, it's about economic power, and that religion and violence are simply used as instruments to reach that particular, purpose. Now, I will go on a little bit further and begin to drive it to the direction, where we should be. Now, this is trends of global attacks. Now, if you see the trend here, the top right-hand corner is only showing what Al-Qaeda and its little cells are doing. I told you that one of the reasons why Al-Qaeda is successful is that it can divide and multiply again. Now, all the little affiliates and associates of Al-Qaeda between 2007 and 2013, their operation has increased tenfold. Okay? And you will also notice that if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, now 80% of the deaths associated with those attacks are in 5 countries of the world. Now, if we want to now understand, the economy from political violence, or the political violence of economy, or however you want to turn it, if you want to understand it, it will be important for us to x-ray these 5 countries that contribute to 80%, of the death and violence, and say, what is common here? Then we begin to understand, the how it plays out in terms of economics. Okay? So this is the trend globally. Welcome, Wale. This is the trend globally here. You find that these 5 countries are responsible for 80% of global terrorist deaths. Okay? And that's Al-Qaeda's activity increasing tenfold in less than 7 years. Okay? You will notice that these 5 countries that are responsible for 80% of the political violence and death all have 2 issues, 2 things in common. The first and foremost is that the political leadership is an issue in those countries. Look at Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nigeria, Syria. You can even go through all of them. They all have leadership issues. Okay? They have leadership issues. And so that creates the crack in the wall for people who are hungry for power to perpetrate their inordinate ambition for power using the instrument of religion or violence to go through the crack. Okay? And you can see how much each of those 5 countries are in a hurry to carry out elections, knowing fully well that the one who the power is in his hands is who determines the economy. That's the interplay. So the second thing you will see is that if things were right, these are not poor nations. They are all endowed with natural resources and very vast human resources. And I make bold to say that the countries that are involved in this are countries that actually have things to show. Countries that have nothing for the outside to look up to are not involved in things like this. Now, how far is Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran from the United States? Very far. At the time this problem started, the missiles that were existing in Iran and Iraq could not actually reach the United States. But why did the United States respond very fast? There is oil in Iran. There is oil in Iraq. There's oil in Syria. There's oil in Afghanistan. There's oil in Nigeria. Okay? I'm not indicting the United States, but I'm trying to let you know that why these nations have become a turmoil, a ground of battle, is because they have very vast natural and human resources, but they all have political leadership as an issue, and that creates the crack. Now, the intervention of the United States and the West is to try to stabilize so that the economic market can continue to be in the favor of the West. Okay? They do realize that if that intervention is not made, it's only a matter of time and a matter of days. The way we used to export cocoa from Africa to the West, that's the way trouble will be exported from Africa to the West. And already France tasted it this year. And they realized that it's not a good thing for 2 people, 3 people, or 5 people to be killed. Not to talk of thousands of people. I will speed up now. Now, so the question starts with leadership. The leadership that those countries lack is the one that is able to pull its people together in a positive direction. And therefore, you find that the the economy, the social life, and the well-being of the people has been a flat for a long time. And in a global economy that is changing very quickly, and the world that is closing by the use of the internet, people in those countries begin to ask themselves the question, is this the best I can be? Why am I here? You are what you are because of genes and environment. Now, you cannot influence your genes, but you can influence your environment. Okay? So, if you are a Caucasian and you are born in the heart of Africa, you will have the physical attributes of a Caucasian by reason of your genes. But if you grow and die there, you will live like an African. You will talk like an African. You will act like an African. Now, if a guy is taken from the center of Africa and is born in the middle of Europe, by his genes, he will be black. Okay, but his behavior, his thoughts, and everything, by reason of environment, will become European. So as the world began to squeeze together and become small, by reason of interconnectivity, now the people that lack leadership in the area began to ask the question quickly, is this the best I can be? Now I'm beginning to provoke you now to the area you won't like to go. I need you strongly to consider the countries that I talked about before. I need you to consider their case. The case in Yemen. Yemen is a failed state. Nothing works in Yemen. Many governments are in country at the same time and is defined internationally as a failed state. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Nigeria, they are all, today it works, tomorrow it doesn't work. They all have huge potentials, but very far from achieving their potentials. Now, I leave you to do the profiling of those countries because you are academicians and academics and you know better than I do. And I leave you to also give the judgment whether there is good leadership or bad leadership in any of these 6 countries. Leadership drives national development. And national development, you don't wake up to it. It's a stepwise thing. As you learn to crawl, you learn to walk, you learn to fly, you learn to run and you learn to fly, so is national development. And it's as simple as access to food, access to shelter, access to healthcare, access to education, and freedom of expression. That's how simple it is. I know your mind is wondering whether it is the lack of this that makes brother to kill brother or not. It's not my place to answer that. But I can tell you that the world is changing. The global economy is changing. In the last 2 years, 3 years, I was here in Europe. There was almost a complete collapse. And right now, some countries are debating whether to remain in Euro or not. I was here in Europe when Greece was quickly bailed out. And Cyprus had to turn their millionaires to thousandaires and thousandaires to hundredaires and hundredaires to centenaires and whatever you want to call it, all overnight so that the economy of Cyprus will remain. I was also here in the Netherlands when we changed from the guilder to the euro. And it was not difficult for me to find out that then 2 guilders used to make €1, but once they changed, I actually went into the shop and also bought the same thing for €2. You won't know because a number of you came after that and you just met the euro. So that's exactly what has happened. So the world is changing. There's economic change globally across the world. There's expatriation across the world. There is, what do you call this other one? That you take jobs from the Netherlands. Like I've been here, many companies have moved out of the Netherlands and they've moved to Poland. Some have moved to outsourcing. Right now, my company's help desk is in India. Okay, so there's global pressure on the economy. There's emotional bastardization going on. There's political pressure, health, information age, societal pressure, all the things that I have written there. And I need to talk about the top right hand, which goes on subtly and people do not know. Okay, the son of a dog is a dog. The son of a goat is a goat. The son of a cock is a cock. Okay, now it is not possible for a dog to give birth to a goat. No matter the genetic engineering, there will be something wrong. Now, family structure has broken down. So because family structure has broken down, there is nothing being transferred to the youth of today. Now, the moral of life, what is right and what is wrong, protection for life and property is not given now because family structure has broken down. Now, like I always say, and I'm ready to be short on these ones, in the Netherlands, I lived here, and I've lived here now for since 2000 till date. I actually walk out of the Netherlands. And it is the country in the world where I have seen most couples kissing on the street, holding their hands on the street. But I've also come to see that 70% of the marriages end up in divorce. So the family structure is broken down. And this is not only in the Netherlands. I just know you relate to that. That's why I used it as an example. It is global in nature. And worse still, the countries we are talking about, you are legally allowed to marry 5 wives. And I want you to think how a child in a house where there are 5 wives will feel. He will have no respect for life and property. And when the pressures of life press that person, because I was told to talk a little bit about behaviors. When the pressures of life hit that person, he will behave how he or she would behave if he were under pressure in his or her own house. And when the house is not in place, what do you expect? Okay, so these pressures are there, and the summary is that the pressure puts stresses on the human beings. Also, the behaviors and expectations are changing too. This generation are summarized by saying that the generation is a microwave generation. Now, in all those countries that I mentioned to you, in those 5 countries, now the youth population exceeds the adult population. In other words, the age 45 and below is more than the age 45 and above. And I will show you in life expectancy that all those countries have life expectancies less than 65. So now when we have a microwave generation that sends text message instant, coffee instant, everything is instant, and the guy opens his tap, no instant water, puts on the switch, no instant light, applies for a job, no instant employment, what will his reaction be? So the government and leadership needs to know that the world is changing and the expectations of its youth population is also changing. And that's why I said there is a mental shift. You need to think youth and think the future. And whenever the government fails to do that, they breed the reason for revolution. Be it as it may. I'm running, I'll skip all these. These are what the leaders are supposed to do. I've come here to say that the ingredients of national development are easy and known and actually written in our body chemistry. We don't need to read to know them. We know that if a country is doing well, the GDP of that country will be good. There will be access to water, shelter, security of life and property, unemployment levels, and youth restiveness will be low. Life expectancy will be high, literacy level will be high, national reserves high, diversified economic base will be there, industry will be there, well-being of the average citizen will be okay. Now, in such countries, you expect that immigration will exceed emigration. Now, if you look at the countries that I've put there, the emigration exceeds immigration, which means there's a gross dissatisfaction by the common man about where they are living. Okay? And I'll now head towards, as I begin to close, the areas where they want me to talk about. Now, I have put the GDP per capita 2011 as published, by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, I've put it there, and this is it for all countries, and you see the cutoff there being $20-something thousand. If you look through all of this, did you see Syria? Did you see Afghanistan? Did you see Nigeria? Did you see Iraq? Did you see the nations I talked about? Now, the highest there is about twice what I even call the lowest. Now, those countries are so low that they don't show up on this graph. That shows exactly what the actual state is. This is the life expectancy. Now, you guys are fortunate in Netherlands. This was 1996. Now, in 2015, this trend didn't change. It just shifted up. It only means that the Dutch person that used to die, at 77 is now dying at 85. Now, that has its own problem. Because you retire at 65, it means that the government has to keep you alive by paying you money for 15 years. And now, since the country, the birth rate in the Netherlands is less than 1, it means that there's no youth to work. And over time, the welfare programs will go away. And if you are not careful, the Europe will be like Africa. You didn't get it. And that's why you cannot afford to close your eyes and say this is not our problem. Now, all the countries I mentioned there, none is on this graph because they all die before 70. For the first African country that came there is Ghana, and it came in at 65. At 65 years. In other words, me at 52, as a Nigeria, I am in the departure hall of the airport. It's just that my flight is delayed. And anytime they announce the flight, I will not go. Okay? So that's life expectancy. Now I'm making your mind to go somewhere. Now, when you look at it, say, why did I bring life expectancy? Now, life expectancy and GDP have a relationship. They have a relationship. Now, why is this important? Because I really need to go ahead of my time. I'm getting signals here. Why is this important? Now, if I know that my life expectancy is 50, and at 40, I don't yet have a job, I become more desperate than the man who is 30, who also knows he needs to live to 50. More desperate than the man who is 20, who knows he needs to die at 50. Do you understand? Now, as you get closer to your life expectancy, the desperation to achieve the purpose of your being on earth increases. And therefore, your restiveness increases. So when this country looked and they saw that their life expectancy are in the 47s to 50s, and when they graduate at school at 21, 22, and there's no outlook that they will be what they were meant to be, the restiveness increases. And that's what breeds political violence that eventually transforms the economy of this nation negatively, and if it's a revolution, positively. Okay? You may not have seen it that way, but this is the trend. You can see that of Africa is going down. The rest of the world is either flat or going up. Boko Haram, Nigeria. This is the current state of Nigeria. On the top left, there's insecurity intermingled with elections. But Nigeria set a global record in the last election by making the globe know that you don't have to fight to remain in power. Once you got it, you had it, and the people have spoken, so be it. I think this is a good lesson for the entire Africa, because people almost take leadership in Africa as a life, as long as I'm alive, I'm born to lead. Okay? I don't want to talk about Mugabe, but that is how it is. Okay? So I see a positive trend coming out of Nigeria by that signal of concede to defeat. There were more arms in the country before the election than I saw during the Civil War when I was small. Because people were hoping that there will be violent outbreak and killings of people. And nothing of such happened. I think the problem we have now is the disposal of the arms that were acquired. Okay, so that's the state. There's no money in the country. It's all be spent for one thing or the other. Now, there is a lot of bunkering and interference with the main resource base of the country, which is oil. Okay? And I want to tell you that when oil is stolen from the Niger Delta, it ends up in Europe. You can take me to court and I'll prove it, because that's where I work. Okay, so there's encouragement from the Western world to continue to do illegal bunkering of crude oil in the Niger Delta. Okay, because I've seen vessels that are not carrying Nigerian flag loading illegally to take away crude oil. That's the situation. There's militancy in the Delta, and of course, you know that story more than me. We have our own plane crashes too. What we do not have is people committing suicide by killing others as pilots. The road is not safe. Ebola, sickness, and disease. The mainstay of the country is oil. And the budget of the country, at least for this year and last year, was based on $80 per barrel, worst case. And oil has dropped below 60. So before you sell, you have a loss of $20 to $30 per barrel. And with the stealing that I'm talking about, the government is not getting the revenue it's supposed to get, and that put pressure on every part of the economy. In Nigeria, so that as I build up to Boko Haram, as at 2012-2013, 24% of the country was unemployed. That's extremely high. Now, 54% of the 24% are actually youths. And then most of these youths are skilled youths that are unemployed. Now, I want to relate what is happening. The top right is what I showed to you, how Al-Qaeda's activity, went tenfold increase in 7 years. You will also see that reflected in the number of deaths and attacks on the top left by Boko Haram. In other words, there's a mirror image of what is happening globally in Nigeria. And that's why I want to disabuse your mind from the fact that this is not a Nigerian problem. It is a global problem. Okay? I'm saying that both from the fact that I'm a Nigerian and also from the fact that the statistics say so. So as Al-Qaeda was increasing, it was mirror imaged all over the world, including Nigeria. Okay? Now, but you will see the particular case of Nigeria, that at that same time, for instance, the dollar was 100 naira. And within the period, it has more than doubled. And that shows you how much the economy went down. And if you look at the trend for the number of attacks, it also went up to mirror what was happening in the economy and what was happening globally. In other words, neither Nigeria, Syria, or Iraq can live as an island without taking into consideration what is happening elsewhere in the world. This is not to justify the existence of Boko Haram. Now, in that same time frame, Boko Haram was only in the Kanuri region of the northeastern part of Nigeria. And over that time, it spread by its attack, and today is present in all the regions that are deep red, amber, and yellow. Okay, my time is really up now. So I conclude by saying an idle hand or an idle mind is the devil's workshop, whether it's in Syria, Nigeria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, or even in the Netherlands or France. Okay, so I'll speed up. I would have told you the stories behind each of these pictures. And you can see the people that are involved. They are not 70, 80-year-old people. They are the hands that are strong but find nothing to do. I showed the mosque burning there because it's not a religious issue. It is a quest for power and economic superiority. Now, this is the timeline of what has been happening with Boko Haram. Time will not allow us to talk about it, but we do know of the bring our girls back story. Now, you wonder why these things happen. They happen because as long as you remain in the Nigerian Television Authority network, you are a nobody. But once you hit CNN, your issue hits the global limelight. The question in the minds of the terrorists and people perpetrating political violence is, how do I hit global limelight? And that's why they move from complexity to complexity and from price target to price target. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? And so that's what happened in the case of Boko Haram, and today it has impacts on men, women, and children, and the whole country and world is crying that they should stop killing. Now, before I close, I want to say that there has been updates to the Boko Haram that is not covered in my slides. And that is that within the last 2 to 3 weeks, the federal government, together with the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, have done what they have refused to do all this while, and have curtailed as much as possible Boko Haram, releasing most of their hostages today. The operation is still on, and I am not allowed to talk much because by my position I'm privy to some security information, and it will be out of place for me to go deeper than what I have said. But I only want to show to you that when there's a political will, these things can be done. In the last 2 to 3 weeks, I believe what happened in the country drove a political will, and the government sworn into action, and what it could not do in the last 7 years has done in less than 3 weeks. So we are not in a dead end. There's solution to this. Now I want to say that we are all in it together, east, west, north, and south. And why is that? There is actually no reason why violence and senseless killing should be used, to achieve or drive a purpose or as a means of expression of an ideology of frustration. So despite the economic picture and the deprivation that I have painted in all these countries, it is not sufficient reason why there should be senseless killing. The implication of this, we all know, is the insecurity, destruction, and everything. But why is it important to talk about this in Europe? Why didn't we go to Yemen to talk about it? The reason is this: that there can be actual export of violence to the nations to make a statement and gain relevance. That is the main thing. There could be recruitment of nationals into groups. And that's what we see. The people that attacked in France are carrying French passports. The guys in July 7 operation in the UK are carrying British passports. Do we understand what we are saying? Okay, so it is important that we understand this, political economy of violence, clearly. That if we do not stand up as a group, then there's a possibility that the violence can be exported, recruitment of national. But I need to tell you that the European economy is extremely fragile. And it cannot handle massive immigration. Let me give you an idea. Nigeria is, for instance, about 180 million people. Now, that is 10 times the Netherlands. If 1/10 of Nigeria were to come out to the Netherlands as refugees, that means you will double. You will double. For every Dutch citizen, there will be a Nigerian as a refugee. You understand what I'm saying now? 180 million people, 10% just coming out as refugees to the Netherlands alone. Now, all the countries in the Schengen put together in population are not up to that country. There is no neighbor in West Africa that can take the immigration problem if there's an issue with Nigeria. Now, if you broaden it to Africa, the whole of Europe cannot stand immigration. It's only people from Syria that cross to Spain, and the Spanish government is crying. Just a few of them decided to cross. And where the sophisticated boats could not cross, these guys crossed with wind-driven things. Now, it shows the desperation. And when they arrived there, the government didn't know what to do. Now, the European economy is too fragile for them to be neutral in all these bodies. And that's my point. And if I were to have the opportunity to speak in the European Parliament, I would tell them that it's not time to be neutral anymore. Europe has to have a stand in this issue, Netherlands in particular. You don't seek middle grounds all the time. Sometimes you take a definite action and act on it. The bottom line is that you cannot handle massive immigration. You cannot handle massive influx of unskilled labor. Everything is computerized and well regimented here with lots of skills required. Now, if you bring guys who work with hoes and cutlasses into this country, you can't handle them. Okay? And of course, global insecurity. And so, I'll close by asking, what do you think? Can political economy of violence become an issue in Europe? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthias Akingbeno, for that wonderful lecture. Before we, just a minute, don't call yet. Yeah, before we'd like to inform you that our second guest speaker, she happened to have an official assignment, which she had to. She's in the United States now, but she will be talking to us via Skype. So before she comes on, we would like to read our citation. So for that, we call on Julia to come and read the citation of Shola Adebayo.
So I'm happy to introduce to you Miss Adeshola Adeboyejo, and I'm hoping to pronounce her name correctly. She'll tell us later. She's a trial lawyer at the International Criminal Court, who until recently headed the prosecution team in the case of President Uhuru Kenyatta. At various times, she worked at the Office of Public Counsel for Victims and at the Victims Participation and Reparation section of the court. Prior to joining the court, she served as a legal advisor in the investigation division of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the ICTR, and later as prosecution counsel in the tribunal. Ms. Adeboyejo was part of the prosecution team that tried the largest case before the ICTR, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. And she carried that experience forward to handling 2 other cases before the tribunal. She lectures regularly, and she has been both a panel presenter and trainer at the annual ICC seminar and training for counsel. She has also participated in training investigators, prosecutors, and judges in national jurisdictions. She's a published author, and her interests and publications are international criminal law, international humanitarian law, and theology. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Okay. You can do the call now. Let's.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm grateful for the presentation by the previous speaker, and the fact that he has made my job easy by giving such a very wide and global scope.
Thank you so much. We would just move to the discussant. So first, Adirokwa will speak, and we'll get feedback from Mr. Cape. So Adirokwa, you have response. Okay, okay, I have 10 minutes.
I should stay. Let me just say, because I'm not presenting anything. my duty as a discussant is to harmonize the two guest speaker speeches and give you an insight about the weaknesses and the strengths of the discussions, and also help you and kind of guide you to have some insightful questions or that you might want to ask. Of course, I might add one or two things. The first speaker approached the topic from another perspective, not really academic, but with a lot of data and statistics and everything, and it was so fantastic. And the strength of the argument of the first speaker was like the center of the argument is about the power play, which is political power, economical power that influence this political violence, because there is no way you can discuss the political economy of violence without looking at what is motivating such violence, which is political and economy. So it's political power and economic power. And what I want to highlight out of the discussion of the first speaker is making references to terrorism and leadership and good governance. But there are some weaknesses in it. Of course, he emphasized more on the need to have good leadership in all the countries listed. We all agree that all of them have leadership issue, and all of them also have enough mineral resources that can attract interests. But the question is that who define what is leadership? Who define the type of democracy they are going to practice? Because if you look at Ukraine, they are doing fine before before the West, go there and say that you must have democracy. You don't have good governance in Ukraine, and I can bet you that people in Ukraine will prefer to be under Yanukovych better than what they have now, because they are under war and civil war. And look at Libya. Look at all the countries. We have raised question of democracy, good governance. People are maltreating you. People have been marginalized. People will tell you that they prefer to live in the era of Gaddafi than to live in this era. So at least we want to look at it, that such questions, and see on the perspective of, are we talking about the Western idea of good governance or Western idea of leadership? And also, if you look at all these countries we are talking about, the government, the leaders, when they stole the money, when they are looting the money, they don't keep it in the African banks. They have the banks in Swiss, in US. So who is accepting this money that they are stealing from all these countries? At least if they are keeping the money in the local banks, at least they can use it to run the economy. But the money are being stolen and being put in the West, and the West will now come and say you are a thief, you have to go, you have to leave. And I think those are the fundamental issues we have to look at it. But one thing that the first speaker raised that is fundamental, that all these conflicts we are seeing is not religious. It has established it with facts that it's not really religion. Of course, there are a lot of narratives to why people can engage in violence. We have different theoretical perspectives to that for people that are doing conflict. The theory of greed and grievances of Cotier, and if you want to look at the issue of Niger Delta, of Boko Haram that you have raised, there are different narratives to that. We have the global political Islam jihadist narratives, and we have people that are living that. We cannot say that people that are moving from UK. We have Abdul Muttalab, the son of one of the richest men in Nigeria that almost blew up the plane in United States in, is it not 2009? Yeah, the underwear bomber. He attended the best school in the world. Talk of the elite school, and we also have one ambassador that have joined ISIS. So we have these narratives of the the fake the political Islam jihadist nonsense of 132 virgins waiting for somebody that blew themselves up. That one is a narrative. It does not really mean that they are suffering from economic deprivation or stuff. And also, we can also look at the political conspiracy, as we have said, that where are these fundings coming from? We have unconfirmed report about, we knew how ISIS come up. When Assad started, he wanted to remove Assad. United States and the Arab Council, they are funding the rebels. The rebels are part of ISIS. So the ISIS overran the other rebels, and now you created, Clinton also said it, we created ISIS. So when you look at all these things, it's very complicated. But there's one thing that you have said, the first speaker said, that is fundamental here is power play. Political power and economic power, and that is a very a very strong position of the first speaker. And another strong position is the selective interventionism. I will hand up now. I just have 2 minutes. The selective interventionism from the West, thinking that you don't have problem. Boko Haram issue or some other Al-Qaeda in Maghreb and all these terrorist groups that are disturbing the economic situation of these countries will have been curtailed if they have interest there. There is no oil in northern part of Nigeria, and there is no oil in Somalia, so they cannot commit their interest there. But where there is oil, you can see how they responded to ISIS, because ISIS is taking over the Iraqi oil. But all these things, I know most of you might want to raise these questions, that okay, it's because of the economic interest. That is why some people are even perpetuating this violence. And I want to end up on the first speaker's speech. Is about the last one. Is about how you define terrorism. Some people terrorists are some people freedom fighters. There are a lot of in the PowerPoint. There are lots of organizations. As you have said, thank God you said it's not your rating, it's the statistics rating, but those statistics have been challenged, that most of the groups that are there who really call them terrorist groups, because the PKK now are really of the Kurdish people are really fighting hand in hand with the US allied forces, to defeat ISIS. So because your interest is with us today, you are our hero. But because you are not in our interest today, you will label terrorist group. We knew how much time it took the United States to label Boko Haram terrorist group. So these are very, very fundamental issues, as you have said, political power and power play. And on the second speaker, he doesn't really say much about, he just goes straight to academic perspective of it. We all know that lots of investments, the economical impact of the conflict that is happening everywhere. I was watching Kobani. I don't know whether any one of you know Kobani. Yeah, I watched it 3 days ago. There was no house, no building that did not have missiles, that was not touched by rockets or missiles. So you can imagine, if you watch it from the area view, it's even worse than the earthquake of Nepal. I don't think they can reconstruct that place. It's going to take them years. Look at destruction of Israel, of the West Bank and Gaza, anytime they have conflict because of Israel. And all these things, it just take like 2 stupid people to just shoot rocket into Israel, and there will be responses, and because of political power, political interest, and economical interest. So if you consider all these analysis, the money that's going to be spent, the kind of resources that are going to be put in place to reconstruct a war country is triple than the money they even need to put in place infrastructures and basic amenities that will not make people to go into violence. So, but because of selfishness, as we call it, as the first speaker has said it, that is because of political power and economical power that people really want to hold on. And I think this is a very important issue that you should look at. Because of time, I will not be able to give my own opinion about these things. I just give a summary of what the two speakers have said. And I know the second discussant has more experience working in the UN. You will be able to say one or two things. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cape Kasahara. I'm a PhD researcher, and I used to work in the UN as an economist in the area of economic development, particularly in Africa. I found the first speaker's presentation is very eclectic and entertaining, but it's rather difficult to distill what is the fundamental elements that he wants to emphasize. So I want to make myself some presentations on what do I think about the cause of domestic violence. And fundamentally, I think domestic violence is coming from the three different factors. Economic factors, as an economist, I would say income levels of the society has much to do with people's satisfaction level, and also income distribution of the income of the nation is also creating the satisfaction and the dissatisfaction among people that could be a conflicting factors. And also a very interesting thing is the structure, sectoral structure of the national economy is also very important. As you can see, many of the country the speaker is being emphasizing is fundamentally the primary product producers. So as a country is growing in a structure of the economy into the manufacturing sectors, and when the national economy is growing up, general tendency of the violence is going down. That means lack of sophistication of infrastructures or industrial sectors is maybe something to do with violence. And that's major elements of economic factors, I think. Political factor is basically the governance questions. To what extent people's wills and opinions being reflected in a government. You may consider the case of the democracy as a factor. But anyway, something to do with the governance and fairness of representations and the freedom of the political belief. Those are reflected in a society, may have much to do with people's level of satisfaction in political terms. And historically speaking, another very important factor is the socio-ethnic factors. That means more ethnic, multi-ethnic the society is, they tend to having a conflicting frictions among people in a society. Therefore, more homogeneous and sharing the same languages, for example, and religion tend to have a more coherent society. Therefore, the level of violence or conflict may be lower. On the other hand, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society tend to having a more factor of conflict. And that may have something to do with violence in a society. Now, that's what I'm talking about is a domestic violence. Now, how about international violence? This is a bit more abstract, I think. But my perception of international violence, I interpret it as a terrorism activity, is basically the perception of some people being feel victimized by international unfair system. Therefore, the dissatisfaction of the people, which is due to the external influence, may react to the external source, which creating the dissatisfaction. Therefore, the perception of international fairness may be very important. And maybe some part of the dissatisfaction is also going against the government who cannot stand against those external threats, or sometimes structurally become a partner with the external exploiters and creating the exploitation within a society. If that is the case, then international terrorism and domestic terrorism may go hand in hand toward different targets. And also, maybe some of the terrorist group may feel that their own national interest is mistreated. That means national image is being destroyed. That means, anyway, the concept of the victimization is a very fundamental concept which drive those group of people to fight very strongly against the external source, which are not very friendly to that national interest, to the society. Briefly, that's my reaction.
Thank you. So we have open the floor now. So for question and answers, anybody who has any question, can just raise up your hands. And okay, yeah.
Is the second speaker still available, or she's? Oh, great, awesome. I think for her, I had a question. Oh, ooh, I'm gonna be famous. Okay, for her, I had a question because she'd been talking about the funding that I don't know where I'm looking. Yeah, but okay. Oh, right, great. Okay, for her, the question I had was, you'd been talking about how some of the funding for Boko Haram has been coming from actual government officials because they've been trying to create destabilization for political reasons. And but the question is, can we then argue that Boko Haram was a creation of Nigerian parties, or the external? I mean, if you're looking at the historical context of terrorism in the Middle East, there's a lot of influence from external forces. You're looking at the American government, how they got involved at very different times in very different parts of history, but they created the problem where there was inequality and unequal treatment of citizens, and that's how you ended up with a lot of these dissatisfactions by people, and then they intervened, and then they funded the wrong people. And if you look at all of the leaders, the current leaders of all of the terrorist groups in the Middle East, they actually have been educated at Western, mostly United States universities. You find a lot of them have been part of various US aid programs and CIA programs, and they've been in various US funded trainings. And basically then that would argue that they were created by the American government in essence. And so I think that historical context of how they were actually created was part of the first thing I was interested in. And then to the last speaker, I was a little bit curious. I think in one of the points you mentioned was about the sophistication of the market. I mean, some people have argued that terrorism is engineered to actually ensure that these economies don't grow, because if they do grow and they actually primary produce, especially of commodities such as oil, then they'll actually be able to dictate prices, or at least regulate how much they actually put into the market. So is it possible that they'll actually ever be able to sophisticate, or is it actually chaos created to stop them from sophisticating their economies? Do I speak too fast? So is it possible that they'll actually ever be able to sophisticate, or is it actually chaos created to stop them from sophisticating their economies? Yes.
I think the first question was directed at me.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Hello?
Just say
I mean, the first question was directed at me, and it was, if I understood it correctly, the questionnaire wanted to find out whether or not we could say that the funding of Boko Haram came through government officials. I didn't have time to go a bit more extensively into my paper, where there have been specific incidences where
resources, natural resources, oil, minerals, they are very well developed. That means demand is there, and the market channel is there to demand those suppliers. The point is, supplier side is not sophisticated enough to meeting the demand. Therefore, the market transaction is not really functioning very well. Even under-the-table payment is well accepted. And in that situation, the corruption and irregular payment is taking place. But you cannot blame the market as such as a cause of the conflict. Because if you're looking into manufacturing sectors, computer market, for example, they are well developed. But those producers of computer are not necessarily violent countries. Therefore, market to which that you produce goods internationally has less to do with the violence. What is more important is a gap of the structure and sophistication of the international market on the one side and a domestic market to coping with international pressure. That's what I think is more important.
I've asked for 2 minutes to make some clarification because as you are talking about Boko Haram, I was itching because I spent the last 4 years researching Boko Haram, in which I produced papers that have been published. According to, I want to link the two questions together because it's still the same thing. Now, when you're talking about Boko Haram, it started as a sect used by politicians in 2009. But the Boko Haram of 2009 is not a Boko Haram of 2011, it's not a Boko Haram of 2013, it's not a Boko Haram of 2015. They metamorphosized, just like ISIS. ISIS has been with Al-Qaeda as a splinter group, but they are not as strong because they metamorphosize. So they don't have foreign fighters. So Boko Haram become very, very, very active immediately after the fall of Libya, because there was caches of weapons flowing from the north down to the south from the Tuareg rebels. And when you talk of market, according to what it says, we cannot blame market, actually. I'd rather pick up from what the first speaker said about look at all these countries, especially from the Middle East and the Africans and Sub-Saharan Africa. Look at them. All of them are like, I cannot say traditional society, but cultural and tradition and religion still hold a very strong position in terms of running the lives of people in those countries. So it's very easy for somebody to play using religion, cultural or norms or ethnics to play games with people. You cannot just easily say that in Netherlands or in Spain or in Germany and say because you are a Muslim or a Christian, you just talk to people and you pick them up and you think they will go out there. No. Because we have a lot of atheists, you have a lot of people, So when you look at that, it's very easy. It's not about market. We have countries that are producing, that are very fantastic. They are doing well economically, but yet we still have terrorist group springing up there. So I don't want to really agree whether it's market, but of course market might have impact in the making people to lose their jobs and other things. Thank you.
So the next round of questions, we just have our questions. All the questions will go around, and then the speakers will react to them. So you want to ask questions? Okay, you can just come. Okay.
Well, mine is not actually a question. My name is Bumidi Salami. I'm doing the short course here. And I was here in 2011. I was part of Scholars 2011, 2001, 2002. I did Women, Gender and Development here. I'm a politician. I would just like to say a big thank you to the organizers of this program for drawing attention to this issue, because we get to hear about what's happening in the Middle East, we get to hear about terrorist issues around the world, but, when it comes to the issue of talking about what's going on in Africa, in Sudan, in Nigeria, we rarely get to hear about such outbreaks. So that's why I would like to commend this committee for putting this together. And I'd like to say a big thank you to the guest speakers. Shola, it will have been nice to have her here, to have her perspective that she was putting across to us. The first speaker spoke about politicians smiling to the banks. Well, I think there are times we overgeneralize about what goes on around us. We may need to have that qualified as corrupt politicians smiling to the banks. I have not been smiling to the banks. And I have been in government. I have been a commissioner. I've been a special advisor, and I've held critical positions. I've been in charge of planning and MDGs for my state. What I see here, that my own summary is that Boko Haram in Nigeria has been a case of carelessness, corruption, lack of the capacity gap in leadership, as well as the politicization of the military. It's been said, it's been alluded to that politicians started Boko Haram. We really cannot confirm that. It has not been confirmed. Those are merely speculations. And we know, as a member of the political class, for the first time in Nigeria, we have power changing hands. It has never happened. We have the opposition that has taken over, which also talks about the power of the citizens. If they know how powerful their thumbs really are, to really vote out politicians that do not perform. And we know, and I hope that in another year or so, we will be having conversations at the ISS looking at how, what has changed in the area of insecurity in Nigeria. We know terrorism is a global phenomenon, but we are not also going to shy away from taking responsibility for not managing Boko Haram effectively, because when there is terrorism, when there's an outbreak, what we need to look out for is the response, because that also shows how committed a government is to its duty to the citizenry. And I hope that in the 6 weeks that I'm here to learn more about governance and democratization and public policy. And in the last 4 weeks, I've really been exposed to things that I didn't think of, to things that affect governance in a way that I didn't imagine them. So for me, this is looking at another perspective, stepping back and looking inwards. As a politician, you're in the thick of it all, and everything is all about you. And we're really not demons. We're not the devil that everybody thinks we are. So we also learn to try to do things differently. We'll learn to see what are the gaps in policy and planning, and how we can best make use of all the capacity, all the resources that are available. So I thank you so much. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation that came over here. We heard this evening, and one thing that popped up in my mind, especially hearing from the first speaker, and I've been battling with it originally from Africa, as you can see, is a question of leadership. Because we all talk about leadership, and what I grapple with respect to the areas that he mentioned where there's trouble around the world. You talk about leadership, you talk about governance. How do we define good governance? Because I believe that as far as leadership is concerned and governance, whether it is good or bad, must have a core, some kind of ideology as the premise. And should it be democracy, communism, socialism, or what? I'm just thinking aloud, something so that we can take, because there are a lot of leadership training schools around the world, and a lot of these, to me, most of the time is more confined in the laboratories of academia and intellectuals. And how do we bring it to the open so that these places, we'll ask the question, do we allow them to develop their own kind or form of governance without interference, external interference? How do we go about doing that? Or do we have to have a blanket democracy around the world? And in conclusion, I would like you to think about this, the governance in Singapore. The late president of Singapore, somebody called him a benevolent dictator. Now, I'm sure that kind of governance or leadership would not be appreciated in America. But by and large, it served them well. So this is something, food for thought.
Thank you. So, other questions, Sieta? Please, okay. Each other person? Let's just have it 30 seconds, so let's just wrap it up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you to the speakers for their presentation. I just have a quick question. And my question is, the last speaker said that there is domestic and international terrorist group. How do we classify Boko Haram? And if it is international, how can we link Boko Haram to the international economy?
Thank you very much. The other person, can you just come this way, please? Sorry.
I thank you for your your interesting insight about Boko Haram. My question to you, all of you, is Boko Haram is not only active in Nigeria; it's also active in neighboring countries. Should the African Union play a role, like an active role? So it's not about countries themselves, but the whole of Union come together to create a big force and then go after Boko Haram. Thank you.
Thank you. Which other person? Okay, Jeff, can you just come, please? Thank you. So we just have 5 minutes. We finish the event. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. I have a question about the marketing linked to the economic and political structure. I've traveled the world a bit now, and I've seen in many countries, including other countries that had terrorism in it, that the political economic structure normally has, because political tends to hold too much power. They don't make an economic structure that the people themselves can live within. And by those means, if they can live within, they can govern themselves to a certain ability. Not ability to go above the political might, but the ability that they can control certain outcomes in their own area and ask other areas nearby to help. In larger countries like Nigeria that we've been talking about with Boko Haram, it's impossible for the government to be all over Nigeria. The best defense system for that country would be the people themselves. So in order to enable that governance, there needs to be an enabler, shifting of power from not only the political mainstream, but more to the people themselves in different forms, and not only what they call Western education, but also local specific education, sharing of resources, sharing of economic wealth, sharing of financial resources. And then you'll see also that there's a difference in classes also in those places. If we can find a way to make a common ground that everyone is accessible to everyone and not people are blocked out of certain groups, groups like Boko Haram could not exist. They could not gain hold, because in the Muslim community, you have their opposition. In the financial community, they have their opposition. And everybody wants to live a positive life among each other. So the question would be, how can we now share that power from a top structure that we have now to organic structure that would be active to take on any terrorism act or any economic or political threat that also weeds out corruption? So it's something to look at.
Thank you so much. Finish? Question is finished, okay? You want to just respond? Just the speaker just respond and be close. In 2 minutes, please.
All right. Thanks. One thing I'm